everyone be happy. May every one of us see to it that nobody suffer from any pain or sorrow. I do not ask for crown, nor I wish to be in heaven or reborn. I only want to alleviate the sufferings of those people who are burning in fire of sorrow.
Thank you. I request Dr. B. Sachidanand Rai, President IMA, to welcome the gathering.
Respected dignitaries on the dais, senior members, and my dear colleagues. We doctors are very poor in financial management, so we thought after the budget, we'll get an expert to give us a talk on how to plan our financial, our money, and nowadays it is very important because of the increased atrocities, we may end up stop practicing at the early age. So better to have a proper planning of our money so that we can get a decent return. So when we decided this, we asked Mr. Chandra Mohan, he's a well-known chartered accountant in Mangalore. He readily agreed and he's here. On behalf of IMA Mangaluru, I extend a warm welcome to you, sir. I request Sudhindra to hand over a flower-bearing plant as a part of Green Mangalore initiative. I welcome all the senior members and all my colleagues and members from the Motilal Oswal group for this program. Welcome one and all. Thank you.
Just a brief review of our activities in the last 3 months, which we told orally in the last meeting, but the pictures were not shown. Just I will go through that. And in March 15th, we conducted a talk on life at line of control by Brigadier I.N. Rai. And Mega Health Expo was conducted on 2 days from morning 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. at Kadri Park, which benefited more than about 5,000 public, and information about all aspects of the health, including hospitals, laboratories, institutions, as well as insurance companies, health insurance companies were displayed at this Health Expo, which was inaugurated by our Police Commissioner, Mr. Sandeep Patil, and almost every hospital in Mangalore has put up a stall displaying their facilities, and these were the pictures of that. And we also displayed our IMA and AMC activities in this, and we conducted a poster competition for various college students, in which Yanapoya College won the first place. And evening health education entertainment program was inaugurated by Sri Jitakamananda Swamiji of Ramakrishna Mutt, and various health education programs were conducted. And next day morning, that is on 7th April, with the Ramakrishna Mission, Swachha Mangalore initiative was undertaken by IMA at Kadri Circle premises, and these were the newspaper reports of that. And first of its kind in the entire country, where a IMA conference in regional language was conducted on 26th May, and it was inaugurated by Dr. S. Sachidanand. He was a Vice Chancellor, is a Vice Chancellor of RGHS, as well as keynote address by Dr. Manu Baligar. And these were some of the activities, and 6 well-conducted panel discussions were held on that day. And IMA Young Doctors Wing was also inaugurated on the same day. And thyroid update in association with the Endocrine Society of Mangalore was inaugurated by our past president, Dr. Prabhakar Rao. And on the same day evening, second edition of Yakshagana program, Cancer Awareness Yakshagana program, was held at Panambur in association with the Nanage group. And these are some of the pictures. And IMA, we also contributed in the nationwide protest and candlelight protest, as well as on 17/6, that is Monday morning, we held a protest meet. And this was the Green Mangalore initiative taken up along with Forest Department and Horticulture Department at Padil. And about 100 saplings of fruit bearing trees were planted on that day. And these are the pictures. And same day evening, Doctor's Day celebration was held on the previous day of the Doctor's Day, where kids as well as IMA members showed their talents. And we had one of the renowned stand-up comedian and ENT surgeon, Dr. Jagdish Chaturvedi, who gave a very good speech, and 6 senior IMA members from all over the district, including Mangalore, Puttur and BC Road branches, were felicitated on that day. And members in news, our past president Dr. K.R. Kamath held a radio program. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. It is my pleasure to introduce you Mr. Chandramohan K.Y., an alumnus of St. Aloysius College, Mangalore. Mr. Chandramohan got his preliminary training in Chartered Accountants under the able guidance of B. Balakrishna Shanberg in the period between 1989 to 92. Since then, he has established Chandramohan K.Y. and Co. Chartered Accountants in Mangalore, and it has completed so far 25 years of its service in Mangalore. Mr. Chandramohan has been the chairman of the Mangalore branch of Indian Institute of Chartered Accountants of India for the term 2011 and 12. When there were several new initiatives were taken and several new members were joined. During his tenure, the Mangalore branch was awarded the Highly Commended Performance Award for the year 2011 in the southern region. Mr. Chandramohan is married to Mrs. Chitra Chandramohan. Initially was an electronics engineer, but he converted her into a chartered accountant again, and she has been a partner in his firm. They are blessed with 2 daughters. Miss Madhura Karanth, she is pursuing her law education at Nalsar University, Hyderabad, and her his second daughter, she is going to be one amongst us. Miss Manasa Karanth, she has completed the first year of MBBS course at Father Muller's, and soon she is going to become a doctor. I welcome sir for this gathering. Thank you.
I request dignitaries to occupy the front row in front of the dais.
Respected office bearers of IMA Mangalore, distinguished members of the IMA, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, my heartfelt thanks to the office bearers of IMA Mangalore for having given me an opportunity to share some time in the midst of this august gathering of the distinguished medical practitioners of this region, whom for a long time I have held with great awe and admiration. Not because my second daughter started her baby steps in her attempt to enter the realm of this very noble profession, but perhaps after the awareness created some time back because of the lot of publicity in the social media, at a time some years back when some of our arrogant and stupid lawmakers of this state thought it fit to control this august profession in the name of regulation by bringing the Karnataka Medical Practitioners Act or bill at that time, and when a lot of things were being circulated, and perhaps it was at that time I realized the hardship, diligence, dedication and the sacrifice, supreme sacrifice, which is not coming into the public realm, that is displayed by the members of this diligent profession. And today I really deem it a privilege to share some time with you. So my salutations to each one of you, members of this noble profession. Ladies and gentlemen, for a long time in the journey of this nation after independence, the union budget was always looked at an occasion or at a time when the entire nation would look up to the union government or the finance minister with a lot of fear, awe and anticipation, wanting to know how they are possibly making our life more miserable. in terms of new taxes, new impositions, and the government trying to get into areas which they should not be doing in the first place. But all of us are witness to history that a lot of things have happened. Perhaps it is heartening that we are fast moving from a position of being a developing nation to a developed nation in the near future. And today, because of historical and other reasons, Union Budget is not the one document where the government lays out its strategy, maybe because of the introduction of GST and many other economic and other measures. It is only one of the aspects where the government lays bare the details of its income and expenditure in terms of the financial statement for a particular year. So whatever Union Budget was being looked up to maybe about 2 decades back is not in a manner in which it is looked at present. Nevertheless, this Union Budget was seen with a lot of expectation and anticipation because it was portrayed to be or expected to be a vision document for the next 5 years of governance in the second stint of this Modi Sarkar. So from that point of view, generally some of us may see and a lot of critics argue by rating the budget based on the performance of the stock market, when many of us have seen that the stock markets have received it in a negative manner in the sense that the Sensex crashed by more than 1,400 points in a matter of 3 days. So sensing it, the stock market as an economic barometer of the economic performance, some of us may be tempted to say that, okay, I think dark days are ahead of us or hard days are ahead of us. The stock market has got its own way of looking at things, but here today we are here to discuss, or perhaps I will just try to throw some points which may be of relevant to this profession of medical professionals. All along, one important aspect of the Union Budget was to lay bare the financial statements of the government. When we say the financial statements, necessarily it is an account of the revenues and the expenditure. The performance of the previous year, the estimates of that particular year, and the proposals of the ensuing year. Normally a budget will have 3 parts. One is the actual performance of the year that has already passed by, the revised estimates of that particular year in which it is presented, and the proposals for the ensuing year. Now if a government has to outlay expenditure, it has to necessarily collect revenues, because in the first instance it collects revenues and then these revenues are utilized for various revenue and capital expenditure. And this is where maybe many of us are taking a hit in terms of the government proposals to levy fresh taxes or tinker with the existing taxes in its efforts to mobilize resources. I think all of us are aware, in this particular year, an interim budget was presented on 1st of February 2019 to provide for the government finances for 4 months because the government was going into the election mode. And soon after the elections, the full budget was presented recently on the 5th of July 2019. Now the budget proposals determine the taxes for the financial year. This budget proposal determines the tax for the financial year 2019-20, which in our income tax parlance we call it as the previous year, relevant to the assessment year 2020-21. As I mentioned earlier, Sensex crashed and lost over 4,400 points in 3 days. The depressed market sentiment presumably may be because of an imposition of a surcharge on income tax on high net worth individuals, Hindu undivided families and association of persons. More so, the depressed market conditions was because 40% of all the foreign portfolio investors also had invested their funds in India as trusts, and they would be hit by this new levy or the levy of surcharge on the income tax. Also, the government came up with a prescription of a minimum of 35% public shareholding in listed companies, which would result in a lot of companies requiring to bring out about stocks worth 4 lakh crores into the equity market to reduce their family holdings to 65% of the total shareholding. So that would bring in that much more of shares, and that was one of the reasons why the sentiment was affected. Also, the government proposed to levy a 20% tax on buyback of shares of companies. Of course, the increase in petrol and diesel prices with immediate effect by way of increase in excise duty also added to that sentiment, and on the whole, there was a depressed situation. Anyway, this is the macroeconomic situation which I don't think we need to get deep into, but just as a flavor. But what is it that affects us as individuals? There has been no change in the tax rates as such, but there is an imposition of a steep surcharge on high net worth individuals, Hindu undivided families, and association of persons, where the trusts also come into being. This is not the charitable trust or the public trust, but the private trusts or some of the associations which form themselves into association of persons or trusts which carry on business. Now, for assessable incomes between 2 crores and 5 crores, the tax rate remains at 30%, but there is a levy of a surcharge which until last year was at 15%, which is now increased to 25%, taking the effective tax rate to 39%. We had a situation previous year where, including the surcharge and the cess, the maximum tax rate would have been about 34.88%, which will now be 39% for this financial year ending March 2020. And for individuals with assessable incomes exceeding 5 crore rupees, the surcharge is levied at 37% on the tax amount, leading to an effective tax rate of nearly 43%. There was a talk or an expectation or some sort of a fear that the government would reintroduce the wealth tax or possibly reintroduce the draconian or dreaded estate duty, which was there in the statute book for a long period of time and which was withdrawn in the year 1987 by the then Finance Minister V.P. Singh. So there was an expectation that the government, in order to mobilize resources or to go for a populist measure whereby to reduce the allegation that it was favoring the rich, they were trying to introduce the wealth tax or estate duty, but later on the Finance Minister thought it fit to tax the rich by way of this levy of surcharge on income tax. Now this is a slide, maybe it may not be visible there, but I am just requesting you to concentrate on the last 2 lines. See, up to 2.5 lakhs is exempt. There is no change in any of the slab rates. Even at the higher slabs of 2 crores or 5 crores, the basic tax amount remains the same at 30%, but only the surcharge of 15% has become 25% for individuals with income between 2 and 5 crores, and for incomes above 5 crores, that surcharge becomes 37% in the earlier, as against the earlier 15%. So this is the change as far as the tax rates are concerned. But here again, some of us have a reason to complain that we are a highly taxed nation. But if we make a quick glance over some of the developed countries also, excepting perhaps Switzerland, all other countries have the maximum marginal rate at a very high figure, starting from 37% in USA up to 57% in Sweden, of course, at higher levels. But then there is a counter argument saying that there are various social security benefits and other benefits given to the taxpayers, so maybe that is justified. Anyway, this is one refrain that some of us may be having, but this is the hard reality that we have to live with for the next 1 or some years. Now, as far as the quick figures, just a flavor of that, the fuel price hike is expected to bring in an additional 22,000 crores. The surcharge on the super rich is bringing in another additional 12,000 crores to the government. So about 34,000 crores is the increased resource mobilization. They have reduced the corporate tax for companies with the turnover up to 400 crores from 30%, they have made it to 25%, so they are losing about 4,000 crores. So the finance minister wants to mop up an additional 30,000 crores by the levy of the excess duty on fuel and surcharge on the super rich. Now let us quickly get into some of the points, maybe wherever it affects us as professionals in Mangalore. I will spend some time, but otherwise I will quickly run through. There is a new provision of TDS on withdrawals of cash from current account. This may not affect most of us, but those of us who are running a business or a part of a business establishment in terms of a hospital or some other medical facility, maybe even then there may not be a requirement for us to withdraw cash. But here, what has happened is the government has thought it fit to introduce a 2% TDS when we withdraw cash from a current account exceeding 1 crore in a year. Why they brought in this one was because maybe none of us are in this particular realm, but nevertheless, in the year 2017-18, the government data shows that about 2 lakh individuals or business entities withdrew about 11.31 lakh crores by way of cash from their own account, and just 448 entities in India withdrew over 100 crores each, aggregating to about 5.56 lakh crores in terms of cash. They may have their own reason for that, but what happens even if this TDS is collected, it will be set off against the tax liability of that individual or concern. Anyway, perhaps some of the further slides may be of some relevance to us. This is one new provision which I think many of us need to take care. All of us are aware that the government, one of the ways in which the government collects its tax is by way of TDS, that is the tax deduction at source. Many of us who are attached to one or the other hospital or other establishment, we get a part of our receipts by way of salaries, also as professional fees for being attached to some institutions or hospitals, and then the TDS is made. Now, one new provision has been introduced which affects all individuals, even for their personal payments. All this time, the provisions of TDS were applicable when a establishment or a business entity or a commercial venture was making payments to professionals or to other persons. But now what happens? The government has thought it fit to introduce a new section 194M in the Income Tax Act, where it says any payments made to contractors or professionals exceeding rupees 50 lakhs in a financial year attracts the provision of TDS at 5% of such payment made by individuals or HUF. The responsibility is on the person making the payment to the service provider, where when we make the payment, a 5% of that amount has to be withheld and paid to the government. This is applicable even for personal payments, and perhaps we have to be careful when we make payments for construction of a house, office space, etc. Perhaps what I can see immediately is that many of us may be spending money for construction of house, even though all this time we were thinking it is a personal payment or a personal thing. Maybe in the future we need to be careful on this count. They have tried to give some exemptions or deductions by way of benefits. Of course, in this budget there have not been many changes. There has been maybe one or two rationalization provisions. Except for that, there have not been any changes in the recent budget. Of course, some changes were introduced in the previous interim budget, but whatever little changes they have made, I will quickly run through for the benefit of the audience here. Perhaps one measure, again seen as a populist measure, practically it may not have much significance. They speak in terms of a tax incentive for affordable housing under section 80 EEA. Most of us are aware that already there is a benefit of deduction up to 2 lakh rupees on the repayment of a housing loan that we take for the construction of a house, irrespective of the number of houses we hold. That is a 2 lakh benefit which is available for the interest paid on a housing loan. Now the government says that we are going to provide you an additional deduction of 1.5 lakhs per annum on any loan sanctioned between 1st of April 2019 and 31st of March 2020. For the time being, they have given only this 1 year window, where the stamp duty value of a house should not exceed 45 lakh rupees and SSC does not own any other house on the date of loan sanction. This deduction is over and above the present deduction of up to 2 lakhs. But I think it may not be of much help, because when somebody goes for a house of 45 lakhs, even if he borrows a loan of 40 lakhs, maybe in the 1 or 2 years the interest may be exceeding 2 lakh rupees. Otherwise, many of us may not be able to take the benefit of this provision. So this is perhaps only a populist provision, just where they have shown some lollipops to just appease whatever audience they want to appease with. One other provision which maybe some of us may be able to help avail, may not be from a deduction point of view, but as a part of the nation building process, where now the in thing is discussion on the electric vehicles. So the government says a new provision is introduced: interest paid on loan taken for purchase of an electric vehicle. An additional deduction of 1.5 lakhs per annum is allowed when we pay, that is for the interest paid on a loan taken for purchase of an electric vehicle. The loan for electric vehicle purchased on or before 31/3/2023 is eligible for this deduction. The condition is that the SSC does not own any other electric vehicle on the date of loan. So maybe for the first electric vehicle that a SSC purchases, this benefit is available. Maybe there is a small scope for planning here. What happens is, as of now, most of us are aware, those of us who are in the drawing salary also as a part of our total income. For the salary income, there are hardly any benefits given except for the standard deduction, which was 40,000 in the previous year. Now up to 50,000, the standard deduction has been reintroduced, and maybe some of us may be taking the benefit of the house rent allowance. Or other than these two, there are no other set-offs allowed against the salary income. But when we have a professional income, we have a choice either to maintain books of account and claim the actual expenditure. Those of us whose gross receipts from profession is less than 50 lakhs, in the last 2 to 3 years, they have given, the Income Tax Act provides for a presumptive taxation where they say that if you offer 50% of your gross professional receipts, which is less than 50 lakhs to tax, no books of account need be maintained. In such a case, possibly if we are having, this is only a thought when some of us may try to explore, if at all we are trying to optimize our taxes that way, where we have a vehicle where we could not have claimed the interest or depreciation on that vehicle because we fall under that presumptive tax and we opt to pay the taxes on our professional income at 50%. In such a case, maybe one other electric vehicle, if at all we are paying the interest on loan, we can claim it as a deduction because it is coming under the deduction under 80EEB. The professional income comes under a different category, income from profession, which is between sections 28 to 45 of the 44 of the Income Tax Act. But this is coming under the Chapter 6A deductions. I will not go deeper into that because I feel my professional brethren, the financial doctors, are also waiting for your patronage. So the financial doctors I referred, the chartered accountants. So perhaps you will do well to consult your respective chartered accountants further on this matter. Otherwise, perhaps we too need to find some employment opportunities through the provisions that the government has given, thrown open to us. Coming back, perhaps one particular aspect which some of us may be affected, or maybe we may be able to take advantage of this provision also. The government has introduced tax on buyback of shares by listed and unlisted companies. For some time now, what has happened when the unlisted companies, the companies which were not listed on the stock exchange, when they were going for the buyback of shares, they were required to pay a tax at 20% of that amount. Now they have extended that provision to listed companies also, because the government found that when they brought in this DDT, that is the dividend distribution tax, which is effective rate is about 21.75%, 18% plus surcharge plus cess, etc. Effectively about 22% was the DDT, the dividend distribution tax, when the dividend then becomes tax-free in the hands of the recipient, the shareholder. So the company was required to pay the tax. So what some of the smart companies did was that they said, we are not going to use our accumulated profits for the purpose of distribution of dividend because we'll end up paying 20% tax. Instead, periodically, our accumulated profits will be distributed amongst our shareholders by way of buyback of shares at a premium. So the government found that there was a loophole that way, which the smart people were taking advantage. So in order to plug that loophole, what they said was that, okay, if you are trying to be smart, then even when you go for a buyback of shares, even that is subject to tax at source, that is 20% tax has to be paid. But in such a case, the proceeds of such buyback in the hands of the shareholder will be exempt from tax. So let us say if some of our shares are being bought back by the companies, we will be receiving that as capital receipts, that is free from tax. This amendment is from immediate effect, effective from the date of budget, that is on 5th July 2019. This provision is similar to the dividend distribution tax in the hands of the company and exempt in the hands of the shareholders. But I may just mention, when this DDT or dividend distribution tax was introduced, earlier the tax was paid by the company and it was exempt in the hands of the shareholders for many years, but recently in the last 2 or 3 years, they are trying to tax it again, which is again not a wise step because it amounts to double taxation. Those of us who are receiving dividends of more than 10 lakh rupees, the dividends are exempt only up to 10 lakh rupees. Though the company pays dividend distribution tax at a hefty 22%. Again, it is taxed in the hands of the recipient once our annual dividends exceed 10 lakh rupees. So some of us investors or who rely on the or do well on the stock market or the dividend income, maybe this is a double taxation that we are subjected with. Again, not a very progressive measure from a government. One other provision which some of us would have already experienced is the TDS on the non-exempt portion of the life insurance policy. For some years now, what was happening was some of us may have experienced at the time of maturity or at the time of surrender, premature closure of the LIC policies, 1% TDS was made on the gross amount of payback or gross amount of surrender value. That is only in such cases, such instances where the receipts were taxable. Maybe some of us would have had this confusion. All along the receipts from the insurance proceeds was exempt from tax. But of late, some of the insurance proceeds are taxable. That is subject to some conditions. If it is a single premium policy with some conditions, or if the premium paid is more, the annual premium paid is more than 10% of the sum assured, such policies are taxable at the time of maturity or at the time of encashment by the policy holder. But now what the government has said is, for last few years, they were taxing the entire amount of maturity or surrender value at 1%, but now they are saying only the non-exempt portion, out of the non-exempt portion, only the profit component, that is the total amount repaid minus the aggregate of the premium paid, will be taxed at 5%. Now what happens is, this is only a TDS. Later on when we file our return, we have to give the actual profit, if any, and then adjust this TDS against the taxes that we need to pay. So the only change is, instead of taxing the entire proceeds at 1%, they are seeking to tax only the profit component. That is the difference between the maturity proceeds less the aggregate premium paid. Now they have given one incentive for investment in startups. This provision was there in the last 2 years. They have made some tinkering, some change. Under section 54GB, which has been in the statute for the last 3 years, the long-term capital gains on the sale of residential property, what we are normally advised by our advisors, or what we normally understand, is that when there is a sale of a residential property, a long-term capital gains, either we pay the tax at the flat rate of 20% plus surcharge and cess, or we invest it in a new property. Pending investment, we may keep it in a capital gain deposit, or we may invest in the capital gain bonds for a specified period, which is now 5 years. Now they have introduced one other provision where they say, if the net consideration, that is the gross receipts minus the expenses on sale like brokerage, etc., if the net consideration is invested in the share capital of an eligible startup, here eligible startup is the startup which has been registered with the appropriate authorities, and that particular SSE, if he holds a minimum of 25% of the share capital. Previously it was 50%, they reduced that requirement to 25%, and if the transfer of shares is permitted only after 3 years from the date of investment, then such investments made into such a startup can be claimed as an exemption from the capital gains that we receive. This is an additional avenue, because some of us may not be wanting to invest in a new residential property for whatever reasons. So this is one avenue that they have provided. I don't know how much it will benefit, but still this provision has been introduced in the statute book. Now these are, until now, whatever I have told is whatever provisions have been made in the union budget, which was recently presented, as recent as last week. I will quickly run through some of the provisions which were introduced in the previous budget of February 2019, nevertheless, which has got an impact for this financial year. Exemption from long-term capital gains on sale of residential property. Many of us are aware, when we sell a residential property, we could get the benefit of exemption by reinvesting it in a new property. So long-term capital gains on sale of residential property, what would happen is that if you sell off one asset, you are permitted to reinvest that in one other property. But many a times this would create problems, because for whatever reasons, a person may want to divide it amongst the children, or for whatever reasons he would want to invest, or giving an option of investing only in one residential property may not suit the convenience or purpose of that person. Now what they have said is that if the long-term capital gains is up to 2 crores, reinvestment can be made in 2 residential properties. So even investment in 2 properties would be satisfying the condition of investment made, but this benefit can be availed by a person only once in a lifetime. There is one other provision on the notional rent. Perhaps some of us who are owning more than one property would be aware that what the government says is that you can have any number of properties, but only one of such properties you can assign as meant for personal residence. For whatever reasons, either by acquisition or inheritance, or for whatever reasons or convenience, we would have had more than one property which is not let out, the provision in law for a long period of time is that an SSE is permitted to have one property for his self-occupation that we can opt, and the other properties, even if they are not let out, strictly speaking, they have to be offered to tax at the notional rent. This is the law. How many of us were following it is another score, because income tax is a voluntary compliance. But the law said that if we have more than one property and we say that they are all used for self-occupation or not let out, the law strictly required us to offer the additional properties to tax on a notional rent. But what the government now says is that now the tax exemption benefit is extended up to 2 self-occupied properties, or 2 properties you can designate that I am retaining for my self-occupation, and on the other properties, even if they are not let out, we are supposed to offer it to tax. This means one can now own up to 2 residential house properties without having to pay any income tax on notional rent. See, now I will quickly run through some of the provisions very quickly. These are not contained in the present budget, but in some of the earlier budgets. I thought, because based on our experience, we find that many of us are not aware, or even though we are aware, sometimes we do not follow it in the strictest sense. Now that all of us are experiencing that we are moving to an era of more and more regulation or self-regulation, and the PAN and Aadhaar are becoming all-encompassing and all the transactions are getting digitally mapped, I think it is in our own interest that we follow the law in letter and spirit. And in such a context, I thought I'll quickly run through some of the points. The finance bill in the various finance bills in the last few years, that is giving effect to the Income Tax Act, stated that cash payments for business expenditure are permitted only up to rupees 10,000 per transaction. So if at all, for business purpose, not for the personal purposes, for business purposes, whenever, because many of us are carrying on profession also, when we are carrying on a profession and making our statement of accounts, if we have to claim an expenditure, even a routine expenditure like a rent or a salary, if it is more than 10,000 per transaction, strictly speaking, it should be by way of non-cash transaction, either by check or other forms of electronic payment or digital payments. Cash pay, mind you, one important aspect I think which all of us will do well to remember, even cash payments for advance or purchase or sale of immovable property is to be limited to 10,000 per transaction. Many of us are used to the habit, because we enter into a deal for a long period in time in the Indian context, you know, the property transactions were all going on 2 modes, that is the cash mode and the recorded mode. But more of now, slowly but steadily, it is getting a thing of the past. And what was happening was there was always a negotiation or other factors going on between the purchaser and seller, and then the professionals would say, okay, if there is a difference, we will say that it is treated as cash, etc. But now what happens is, strictly speaking, on the document, you cannot show that I have paid X amount of money by way of cash and only the balance amount I am paying by negotiable instruments. Those days are gone. Here, I think all of us will be well advised by our professionals, but for some reason, if the professionals or we forget or just overlook this aspect, the penalties can be very stiff. The penalties can be up to the amount of the transaction. Suppose we say 2 lakhs is the amount that we have paid by cash, a penalty can be to the extent of 2 lakh rupees. So I think all of us will do well to remember this very carefully. So whenever we enter into transactions of purchase or sale of properties, or even leasehold for that matter, or even advances, rent advance or rent deposit, etc., that we say we are giving to the landlord or the tenant, in such cases, if it is more than 10,000, we will do well to do it by way of negotiable instruments or bank transfers or any other electronic mode of payment, not cash, any non-cash mode of payment. And also, I think most of us are aware about this provision. Eligibility for deduction under Section 80G for donations to specified institutions or approved institutions is permitted only if the payment exceeding rupees 2,000 is made by way of checks or electronic mode. Suppose we say that IMA goes with a fundraising campaign, and then of course, I am sorry to take the name because I presume that IMA is well aware of all these provisions. But the point is, the recipient will always be inquisitive to get more and more funding for his project. So the person contributing, if at all the person wants to take the benefit of the 80G deductions, please ensure that you are making the payment by way of check or electronic mode, because any payment in excess of 2,000 made by cash will disentitle the donor from claiming the deduction. The donee, the recipient can receive the money, but the donor will not get the benefit under the Income Tax Act. Eligibility for deduction for mediclaim insurance premium for self or dependents only if payments are made by checks or electronic mode. Any mediclaim insurance paid by way of cash, strictly speaking, is not allowed as a deduction under income tax. And the sad part is, see, income tax is always a voluntary compliance. We are all going under that safe mode until it is being questioned or scrutinized by the tax officer. But normally the scrutiny happens after 2 or 3 years after the end of the transaction. And then it is a point of no return. We will have to face the music in terms of higher taxes or penalties as the case may be. So it's always better, I think, in our own interest to follow the provisions. One other aspect which, of course, the awareness has come in the last few years, what many of us are not aware, it is a very, very strict provision in the law. Fortunately, the rigors of that has also been reduced now. What was happening, or the Income Tax Act, a particular dreaded section in Income Tax Act, section 195, was stating any payment made to a non-resident, should be made only after deducting tax of 30%. This is a very serious provision because many of us may be occupying a house or an office space which is actually owned by a non-resident. They may be residing overseas, outside India, but in the routine manner we would have been paying by checks and all, following all the provisions of law, but not knowing that any payment made to a non-resident, even a single rupee payment made to a non-resident can be made only after deducting tax at 30%. And the onus is on the person paying the amount, and until this budget, the provision was that if there is a default, the penalty can be equivalent to the amount of payment made to that person. For example, knowingly or unknowingly, we take an office space or a clinic premises on rent from a non-resident, paying a 25,000 rupee per month, aggregating to 3 lakhs in a year, and we pay by account payee check following all the protocol, reflect it in our returns and all that. But for the simple reason that the payment was made to a non-resident, not knowing the provision in law that a non-resident payment should attract a TDS, we may be hauled up by the department asking us to cough out another 3 lakhs by way of penalty, an amount equal. But in this budget, they made a amendment, fortunately, saying that in such a case, not that we should get into that eventuality, but for some reason, knowingly or unknowingly, we get into that eventuality. In such a case, if we can prove that that particular person has offered it to tax, we take a certificate from his chartered accountant in the appropriate format saying that he has offered it to tax and paid the appropriate taxes, then we may be avoiding the rigors of law as it is applying to us. But I think the better option would be for us to deduct the tax. And many of our fellow professionals in the legal profession also were not aware until recently. Some of them, at least now, the awareness is there because of their own hard work and also because of the awareness campaigns. Any purchase of properties also, most of us may enter into transactions of purchase of properties, either land or buildings or whatever, from non-residents, or one of the persons selling may be non-residents. Whenever we get into transactions of purchase of property, many of us are aware that when we purchase a property value more than 50 lakh rupees, we are required to deduct a 1% TDS and pay the balance 99% to the seller. But in the case of non-residents, the requirement is to deduct tax at 20% with the applicable surcharge and cess, which may go on up to 22 or 23%. When the payment is made to a non-resident. Let us say we are purchasing a flat from a person who is a non-resident, who is already owning it. If we are making the payment, then we are required to deduct tax and pay to the government, and only the balance amount, 77 or 78%, needs to be paid to the person. Until recently, the penalty would have been very stiff. Fortunately, they have reduced. Failure to deduct entails penalty equivalent to the amount of tax. But in this budget, the amendment is made to impose penalty only if the recipient, that is the NRI, does not pay the applicable tax on such receipt. These are some quick facts I thought I will share, because most of us are hearing that demonetization has been a grand failure, but at least on one count, demonetization is definitely a success, at least from the income tax department point of view, because the number of individuals filing IT returns has increased from 2.4 crore individuals in 2014 to 8.4 crores in 2018, a 3.5 time increase, which is unthinkable, because it was only 2.4 crores for 70 years, but in the last 4 years, this is again data from the government sources only, the department sources, and the direct tax collections, that is income tax and corporate tax paid by the companies, went up from 6.4 lakh crores in 2014 to 11.37 crores in 2018. The latest budget says in 2018 they have collected 11.37 lakh crores by way of income tax and corporate tax, that is a direct tax. So to a great extent, this is because of the demonetization, the fear or other factors which have brought a lot of people who were outside the tax net into the tax net. So this is in brief the provisions as far as the tax proposals are concerned. Doctor also suggested that you may just briefly throw some light in my experience on the possible investment options. Let me be very clear, maybe on the investment front, I may be an amateur in front of many of you because you may be better investment professionals or investment, what do you say, having more knowledge on investments than me, but maybe very quickly in a very few, a couple of minutes, what I would say is that many of us have experienced for various reasons, historical and other reasons, always we were thinking that one or two areas or avenues would be the sure shot ways for multiplying our money, or which could be good sources of investment. One would be gold and one would be real estate. Because for a long time when the parallel economy was strong as the formal economy, 3 or 4 fellow professionals or our own small little experiences that slowly but steadily everything is being formalized. Almost all financial transactions are entering into the real economy, into the formal economy. So perhaps that is one reason why we see that the real estate market is depressed. That is because for a long period in time, it was all speculative transactions that were happening. Some people who had access to tons of unaccounted money would just chase the real estate market, and then artificially the rates were high. And those of us who got into that whirlpool for our own reasons, out of compulsions, maybe we are now staying invested in some properties which we want to dispose, but we are not able to get the rate that we expect or the returns that we were used to earlier, or maybe our seniors or colleagues were used to. So it is not the fault of the, according to me, I'm not an expert again, my assessment in my own limited experience and wisdom is that perhaps it is not entirely fault of that sector, but for a long period in time, a lot of speculative activities were going on, and now maybe it is the correction that is happening, but maybe for a long period in time, many of us need to suffer if we have already caught into that. And that way, even the gold, for that matter, had its own share of pluses or minuses. Having said that, I think as professionals, we always feel and think, and justifiably so, we are actually the leaders in the citizenry. We are perhaps in our own way trained and dedicated our lives to be knowledgeable and enlightened and learned persons in the society, and we are the people who are actually leading by examples. And maybe it is for people like us who have to show the way or be the guiding lights to other fellows in the citizenry, that in a way, I think, though in the short term some of these provisions may be painful, may be pinching some of us, if the law is followed in the letter and spirit, I think there are enough and more avenues for a diligent taxpayer, a diligent SSC, or a diligent investor to follow the law in total, in letter and spirit, but still optimize his savings and investments, because there are many avenues and many tax efficient modes. Of course, an investment consultant will be able to throw more light on that. Maybe only the tax part of it, the implications on tax may be our domain, more so when we have specialized in that area. So my feeling is that we are in for exciting times, and the intent is always there amongst the regulators. For a long period in time, personally I was feeling, I have put in 25 years of practice in my own limited way. I was feeling perhaps not in my lifetime we would be able to see the type of societies that the developed nations are offering their citizens. But there is a particular hope, at least in the present. The intent is there, now it is the performance. And I think all of us contribute in our own small way to the nation building effort. I think during our own lifetime, we should be able to see a more just, equitable, and a society for which each one of us will look forward with hope and aspirations. So these are some of the thoughts I thought I should share with you. I am open to questions on any topic which you have covered or any other general topic of my domain on income tax that you may have. And once again, I thank each one of you for having given me this wonderful opportunity to be with you for some time. And to reiterate, I always held this profession with high respect and regards. My salutations to you once again. And I think you are a profession which is role model to all other professions. Thank you.
President Dr. B. Sachidanand Rai to hand over memento to our chief guest.